Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Complete Creative, the podcast that helps you build and sustain a better creative business. Today on the show, we have Paul Kilpatrick. Paul is one of the founders of betabooks.co, which helps you get feedback for your books once you've written them. Paul's also worked in the publishing industry, the music industry, and now the film production industry. So he has a whole lot of experience dealing with creatives, and it was great to have him on the show to talk about his experience with networking and mentorship. And we spent a whole lot of time on mentorship and networking and fandom and how to pick the right mentor. And we went down a really deep rabbit hole in this one. And I thought it was great because it's something that you don't hear talked about a whole lot. And I think it's really important. So I can't wait for you to hear it. Before we do, I just want to remind you that at thecompletecreative.com, we have just oodles and oodles of amazing content. We have hundreds of blog posts and free courses and epic blog posts and a whole lot more. And we have an amazing course, totally free, on how to build a better successful business. And if this sounds like something that you would like, maybe, you are listening to this show, aren't you? Then you can head on over to thecompletecreative.com/FBC right now and sign up. It is all through email over 10 days. And that is at thecompletecreative.com/FBC. All right. That being said, let's get on with our show. Take it away, Paul. Tell us what you're passionate about these days.
I guess I spend a lot of time thinking about the structure of the creative world as a business and what creative people have to do to get by. And in the last 2 months, I've really been thinking a lot about peer, mentor, teacher relationships, where their value is, how you can seek them out, how to know what you're getting from them, how to know when to move on, especially is what I've been thinking about a lot. And especially as it relates to authors, because there's so much content, especially now. And it actually came up at your conference where I was listening to people ask questions, and you can kind of see where people are in their creative journey by the questions they ask. And I often wonder if they're looking for like a genie to say, hey, here's how to skip all this stuff, or if they'd be better served by saying, hey, I want someone who's 5 steps ahead of me, who can come alongside me and tell me what to do next. And just there's a lot of people giving advice right now because we're all stuck at home. And so I'm kind of thinking about judging and picking the advice and picking the people to listen to, if that makes sense.
Well, now I'm fascinated by this topic because it's something I think about a lot too. So how do you think about that? Or how do you think about telling somebody what to do when it comes to like finding a mentor or finding a person to listen to?
Well, I think there's a natural inclination to look for the person of greatest expertise, which tends to be people who are very established and have had a lot of success. And I think there's definitely value in listening to those people in an abstract way. But the more I listen to, big podcasts or keynotes and see people who are just starting out furiously taking notes, the more I begin to think, oh, with publishing and how the creative world is changing so quickly, these tips are not helpful and aren't telling you the next step. They're telling you what worked for someone. And something that was true even 3 years ago probably doesn't count anymore or isn't helpful anymore. So people who are just a little bit ahead of you probably are better to listen to and maybe make friends with. I had a vision in my head. It's kind of like there's 100 points, there's 100 levels, and you probably don't want someone who's more than 10 levels ahead of you on the journey giving you advice. And I've been trying to think of ways to write it down. Actually, I'm in the middle of a blog post about it, and it's proving kind of an abstract thing to put into words. So it's been challenging, but that's kind of what I've settled on is you're looking for someone who is far enough ahead of you to have gone through some of the stuff, but close enough that things haven't changed. And they can also still relate to what it is that you're experiencing.
This is really interesting because when I started my career, I always knew that there were people that were way ahead of me that like really did not understand like what I was going through. Like they would tell me advice and And like, I'd be like, well, that's irrelevant to the thing that I was doing. I do think there's still value in them though. So Marv Wolfman, is great. He's not only is he a wonderful keynote, but he's also a good friend of mine. But I remember when every time I talk to him, he's like, I don't know. Like, I can't talk about how to break in. Like, A, it's been 50 years, but B, like how I broke in was just like literally sending a script to Marvel or DC. Crap, I forget. I think it was DC, and
DC probably,
and just like, and they said yes, do a script, and I was like, and then 50 years later, I'm doing this. I do think there's a lot of value from them though in finding out how to continue your career, because I think a lot of the things about breaking in might change, but having studied hundreds of companies and interviewed hundreds of creators and then researched them as well, the things that keep you in tend to be the same. Like, they have not changed much. The functions of how to break in do change, but staying in is a completely different story.
Oh, definitely. And I think that's exactly the perspective I'm thinking of. Is like the stories of breaking in, that's one chunk. And then the next chunk you kind of have to learn is a different chunk. And then as you progress, you have to figure out what is the version now of this thing that you did then. So for instance, I often think of the break-in story is a great story to be inspirational, but once someone's come in through that door's closed, but there's millions of doors. You just have to find your door, and it'll probably be as interesting and as unexpected as whatever that story was. I was talking to an author once who had the same last name as another writer. And so he sent a letter to, I think it was TSR at the time, who makes Dungeons and Dragons, and was like, hey, I'm looking to write something. Do you guys have anything you want written? And they saw his last name and thought he was someone else and gave him a huge project that he didn't end up doing. I'm like, that door is closed forever. As soon as they realized their mistake and it went okay, they would say, never again. But then later on, you're like, oh, well, what's the promotional step now? I was on a panel and someone said, well, I just wrote a blog every day for 3 months. And by the end of it, I had 10,000 followers. I'm like, that doesn't quite work that way anymore. But there's got to be a version of that now.
Absolutely. So I was actually talking about this with my wife not long ago, where I was like, I don't think that I even remember what it was like to break in. Like I can go back to my notes, and I can empathize and sympathize with that person. But like, I do not remember what it felt like to break in. It's something that just happened recently where like that emotion has been cut off to me.
Yeah. Well, it's also one of those things where you have so many more skills and emotions that have been layered on top of it. So having a creative career is kind of like any other skill, at least in my view, where you're like, oh, like today is the first day we're going to learn how to play chopsticks on a piano. And by the time you're playing classical music, you kind of forget what the process of learning chopsticks felt like, or even a time when you didn't know how to do that thing that was so simple. And I think like rejection is one of those things. When you're starting off, it's terrifying. And eventually you just realize that, being rejected constantly is something that flows off of you like water, which is the classic kind of metaphor. But it really does. After a while, you're like, oh, rejection is not a thing I fear. It's just a thing that I have to deal with as a part of the job. And I almost don't remember what it was like when I was afraid of rejection until I tried to do something new. And then I'm like, oh, this is the fear I had when I did that thing the first time.
Absolutely. So I'm going to try and help you see if you can process this like articles. So like, because this has been obsessive thing that I've been thinking about for the last year or two. Because I think that a career happens in 3 stages, and they are equal. They are increasingly less fun and less able to, and there's less structure to them as you go on. So, step 1 is the break-in.
Mm-hmm. So,
there's so much information on breaking in. It's everywhere, and how you can push on that like point of a balloon and then break yourself in. That's also the only one that really has like a release valve. I guess.
Yeah.
Where you can actually see, like, you can actually break out into the atmosphere and be like, oh crap, like I did it. Like I don't know every piece that went into it, but like I did. Like I felt it. I still remember the day. It was February 15th, 2017 was the day that I broke in. I remember because it was the day after we launched our Monsters and Other Scary Shit Kickstarter, and it raised like more in one day than I think I had raised in my first campaign all combined. And like not just that, but just the flood of messages and the amount of people that were coming in were just like, I just knew like that was like the moment that I'd really quote unquote made it. But then it was kind of a mad scramble because now you're like, oh, now I have to prove that I'm not just a one-hit pony. So now you're in step 2. Step 2 is proving that you aren't just a one-trick pony. So that's
second album syndrome.
Exactly. So that's when with the second book, then we released a book called Pixie Dust, which raised $25,000. Then we raised one called Cthulhu's Hard to Spell, which raised almost $40,000. And after that Cthulhu one, I was like, I think I can say that like I'm not a one trick pony. Like I've gotten a lot of these. I've had 3 major successes back to back to back. And then we just did our last one for $31,000. And so but after that Cthulhu one, I was like, all right, I feel like I'm through step 2. I don't know how many hits I'm going to have in my life, but I'm relatively sure that I can objectively prove that I was not just a flash in the pan. Yeah. And then you enter sort of step 3, which is deep space, I guess. And you're just like, all right, so now what? Yeah. Now what's the goal? Like, what is the thing? Yeah, now it's just like, now I gotta die. Now the next step is like death, and like what happens between now and hopefully 50 years from now when like I can have a massive career still. I know I have to constantly like prove that I'm relevant and such, but like there's none of that concerted effort that I could have pushed on in the first 2 stages.
Right, and there's no finish line really in that 3rd stage.
Absolutely. Like
unless you create them for yourself.
Right. Like at some point, people go, all right, I get it, Russell. Like you can make a good book and people want it. Like I believe you now. And then you're like, okay, cool. What now? And they're like, literally anything. Just like do things. And you're like, just do things? I don't get it. But that is sort of like the 3. And you need mentors for all of those stages. Like Definitely. You need somebody who can say, here's how to break through. And you need somebody to say, all right, here's what you have to do to prove that like you're not like a flash in the pan. And then you need someone to be like, how do I now have a career. Like I can work with publishers. I can publish my own books. I can do stuff. Like, where do I go?
And for you, it's like, do I write prose next? Do I do another comic project? Do I do another Kickstarter? Do I go with a traditional publisher? What is the next milestone? And I think for a lot of people, setting your own milestones is really important in that 3rd stage to not lose focus or also get repetitive. In my experience, just people who find new things to excite them and new goals they just set for themselves seem to thrive, as opposed to people who are just like, I'm just going to do this over and over.
Well, so I interviewed. I started this show again with the intention of asking, how do you stay in? Like, how do you like stay in for 50 years? But that quickly became boring because like the answer was the same. It was like literally the same for like 10 episodes straight. And it was you have to find out how to burn yourself down and rise up through the ashes again and again and again and like move to things that are exciting to you and move things and change things and transition things and kind of like reinvent yourself all of the time. And it just became like literally, I don't know, 10 interviews in a row. It was telling me the same thing. And it really taught me that like that is really the secret to step 3. But that's also why like I find mentorships or at least friendships so important in this stage, because you really have to like, it's a lot more thought.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a lot more pensive now about like what projects I take on, what can I do, what should I do. Now that all of the doors or many doors are kind of open to me, I'm like, all right, like what thing is going to like really light me up and move my career forward and do all of that stuff, which is stuff I just didn't think about in those first two stages because I was too busy scrambling to succeed.
Yeah. And those are also some of those things like learning to deal with rejection or playing chopsticks. Like a question I hear people ask at writers' conferences is, oh, where do you get your ideas from? And that immediately is a tell. You're like, oh, like you are somewhere like in the first 5 levels. Because once you reach a certain stage, having ideas is never the problem. It's always figuring out what the idea is that's worthwhile, that's going to excite you, that's going to carry you through. But you said the secret is rising from the ashes. One of the things that I think is very funny about most creative endeavors and writing, especially in the writing community, is there aren't really that many secrets. Most people are really happy to tell you what they are. And I think because you hear them so often, they become less exciting. And so that's where mentors and peers come in to play, because they can say, hey, like we're going to have a conversation today, and I'm going to remind you in your context of the thing that's working for me, so you can see it playing out. And you know it's true already, but having that conversation is helpful. And also for me, it's often helpful to have that conversation with someone else and tell them the thing that I know to be true that I'm also struggling with. Like, hey, like get up and do the thing today, or get up and, write something, get up and edit something.
So,
and if you have, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was talking to my wife last night, and I'm doing this talk today, and they didn't give me a topic or a length of time. They were just like, just talk about whatever for however long. And I was trying to talk like what like brings you, like what is it about a talk that like gets you excited, especially when the people I'm talking to today are like all like kind of professional like people too. So it's not even like I could bring in like, I'm going to talk to a school and I could pretty much talk about anything and they have not heard it before. So she's like, I love to learn a nugget. But like really the ones that I remember are the ones that inspire me to like get back into the trenches and do it. And like, if I could do nothing else but be inspired to go back and do the work, then that is enough for me to get out of a panel or a talk.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a couple of things so far. I want to talk about one more thing, but then I want to define sort of mentors, network, and audience or fandom, because there's people have such a problem with understanding the difference between those, I find. But I want to just relay a quick anecdote, which is my in the entrepreneurial world, there are CEOs that can start up a company. They can get it from, let's say, $0 to $1 million. But generally, those CEOs are not the same CEOs that can get it from $1 million to $10 million. Yeah. And then there's a different CEO that gets it from $10 million to $100 million. And then there's a different kind of CEO that gets it from $100 million to $1 billion. And at each level, the skills are kind of similar, but they're also quite different. And I'm wondering if you could talk for a second about like whether you think that that's the same with mentorship or with like a career as well, where there's like a certain kind of person who's like really good at like getting that initial seed. Like I think that's me. Like I'm really good at getting the initial seed, but then like scaling it to past, like a good from a good like lifestyle business to like a big boy business. That like has like $1 million or $2 million or $5 million run. Like, I don't think I'm the guy to do that. And do you think that there's any validity to that when you're looking for a mentor?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question. And I could easily get down a rabbit hole here, so you're going to have to keep me on track. Because there's a lot of, like, if you look at startup kind of philosophy, there's a place called Y Combinator in San Francisco that starts up biotech companies, and they have most of their information online. You can just watch. And I have frequently told authors just to go watch that. It's all about starting a business, but it's the exact same thing for starting a creative career as an author. But I also think you quickly run into a point where that comparison becomes detrimental, because once you get past like the million, especially kind of in the startup world, you're iterating and you're trying to reduce failure and do things that are different from in the beginning. And I think as an artist and as a creative, failure is an essential part of the process. So you never want to lose the potential for failure or the opportunity to fail. But I think there's definitely value in looking for different mentors as you grow, just because, like you said, there's different things you need to manage as you grow your business. I mean, as someone who's creating their own IP, at a certain point, you're going to want to have to talk to people that could represent you internationally, could print translated versions of yourself. And if the person that you have been getting advice from has really kind of shown you how to work like the artist alley tables and like what the best shows are in the US and how you can manage your schedule and hit, 12 in a summer, and they're happy there and they never wanted to do international rights, you definitely have to look for someone else who can help you with those next steps. I think one of the real kind of beauties and benefits of the current model is that because of the internet and because so many people who are authors are basically their own small business, a lot of those services are no longer kind of mysterious or closed to us. I mean, you can hire great editors online instead of having to be in New York or be in LA or be in San Francisco. Great designers, all those people are now kind of unbounded by geography. And that's great. I also don't think, I think there's a certain point sometimes where someone has mentored you for a while and you reach the point where you've broken through and you're basically just peers now, which is a really good feeling. But I think you find that the people that break through those next levels, the million, the 5 million, the 10 million, is that they have managed to inspire someone else to come alongside them, less like a mentor and more like a business partner. And that doesn't happen for everybody. And some people basically have to become their own business partner. A lot of people do and say, okay, like this is a skill I need to figure out. And it might not be my favorite, but if I want to grow to the next level, I can get advice, but I have to do it myself. And it gets complicated because so much of what we do as creatives, we lean into our skills, which is the right thing to do. And then all of our businesses become very specific and idiosyncratic. So finding that puzzle piece that matches can be really complicated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely it does. We've gone down a rabbit hole, but I'm going to keep digging because
Okay.
This is something I've been thinking about a lot, and it's something I talk to people a lot about. I don't add the mentor part, but I think it's an important part to add. I'm going to add it going forward. So thank you for adding that. I would like to talk for a second about what makes a network versus what makes a fandom. And so, and what makes them, and then what makes a good mentor. So, let me know if you need to sort of me to define any of those things, because I gladly will. But I'd love for you to talk about it for a second, or for hours if you want.
Let me hear your definitions of a network and a mentor, and then we can move on from there.
Okay, so a network are the group of like-minded people who do the same thing as you or are in the same industry as you, who are sort of the other craftsmen who are at your level, above or below your level that you are networking with, cool. Who may or may not read your work, but they are your peer group friends. Nice. Versus your mentor, who is someone who is your teacher, versus the fandom, which is the people that read your work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with most of that. I would say that and I mean, these are terms I find it hilarious. I've written about this a couple of times. How in the writing world we use a bunch of terms and the definitions get very muddy. I would say that a peer group, there's a professional peer group that knows what you're going through, and are writers and the people that you run into and talk to and can go to with your creative problems. And I would say that it's essential for most of us to have a broader network as well. And I would say that, the relationships I have with people who film me or editors or writers for acting stuff, I would say that they are doing something different, but their role in my network and my professional life is as important as a peer group. So I would maybe make a nuanced tweak there. But I would say that, a mentor probably would be someone who's slightly separated from your peer group, just because it's better for them to have a unique perspective. I would say that despite the fact that it feels kind of weird in this day and age, making that relationship explicit and say, hey, will you be my mentor? Will you mentor me through this? Is probably pretty valuable. I think that it's also probably valuable with a mentor to say, hey, like, let's have a conversation about things that are outside of this specific field, like our writing or my career and your career, and maybe talk about things like fundamental beliefs about the nature of reality or the world or right and wrong. So you can say, hey, like this is a person who I'm going to allow to have specific input in my life. I'd like to know that we are moving in the same direction kind of cosmologically, if that makes sense. And then, I'm fascinated by fandoms. I started out in comics and I went to, 2 cons a month for, I think, 2 years all over the US and just kind of saw the different expressions of them. And then I worked in video games and saw that there. And I've done work on music festivals and now I work in film production. And it's a universal thing that people want to find something they like and the other people like so they can like it together. And it's an essential, I think it's an essential skill, definitely from going from like that small to the next step, is figuring out how you can inspire people who like what you create to kind of become an independent community where the thing they get from your work, the thing they value from your work, inspires them as a community to care about each other. And I think it's almost a completely different conversation in my head. And I kind of like the way you brought it in as different communities that are valuable, because it's just a fascinating topic. They can be good, they can be bad, but everyone's a part of a couple.
Absolutely. And so my life has been spent building fandoms for myself and other people, and building out their audiences and the people that like grok the thing that they're doing. And then my life has also been spent building out my own network and trying to find ways to work with it to leverage things like virtual summits and anthologies and group promotional efforts and bundles of things. And they're 2 very different strategic ways that I build and use those things. Like one is about figuring out like what my audience likes and what they want to talk about and then like giving them those things. And one of them is about finding out how I can support the network and build and rise us all up to the next level together as a group. And then I've never officially had a mentor, so I don't know what to look for there. But I've definitely mentored other people, and it is sort of it's different because I'm not like really joining. Sometimes I'll join their anthologies or something, but like generally I am like looking at their career as an observer, a friend maybe, but like really an observer and taking a vested interest in like that one person's career and the trajectory of it.
Yeah, I'm talking about mentors a lot recently because it's come up in the context of other things, and I kind of realized over time that I had stepped into that role for a number of people. I think friendship is really important. I think it's much more common kind of in finance or business or a number of other fields because there are a number of things that make creative mentorships more challenging. Just an aesthetic match or sensibilities that line up is just much more challenging for people in the arts than it is like I make textile manufacturing supply lines. I do too, and I've been doing it for longer than you. I will mentor you, as opposed to here. Oh, you're a writer, I'm a writer. Well, that's the beginning of the conversation we have to get into. Do you like this or that? Do you know what the word grok means? Like you have to go through all those things. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, networking versus fandom. Yeah, that's something that's super fascinating. The idea now that we're empowered to say, I think the people that like me will like this. Let's see if they do. I think that's really where most publishing is moving now, as people like you and other people who found success and created a system as independent publishers. You reach the cap of what you can write and what you can do, and you say, okay, well, I've built this system, and I have these people that make something that I think the people that like me will like. So I'm going to reach out to them and see if we can bring these people together. And I think that's kind of like the new Kismet, the new way of discovery, because there's so much out there. It's almost impossible to find things by accident like you used to be able to do 15 years ago when you'd wander into whatever store it was. And now you're just like, oh, like so-and-so says they like so-and-so. And referral is so important. And kind of that stamp of approval from someone that likes what you like is great. And I mean, I had a little moment where you were talking about how you'd built over and over time. Because like I said, I went through a bunch of different fields, and I feel like I didn't burn any networks down, but I had to restart. And it's very interesting to see the things that are applicable across different creative fields. And that's one of them, which is find the people that both like you and that like to do the same sorts of work. And then connecting them with the people that like what you do is basically the thing we do that's most valuable, I think, as artists outside of creating our own work.
Absolutely. And, I think that people spend a lot of time trying to find mentors, from at least my experience, and very little time trying to figure out how to build their network up, or like find their network and getting the people who are at their level to the next level. Because what I see now, 10 years into this, is like the reason that this whole business is nepotistic is because like they're the ones who went through hell with you. They're the ones that did all the stuff, and like you can trust them. And now I can call people who are like massively successful, and we were not successful together. So I know that like both of us know we're not trying to get anything from the other person. And it allows us to like, now we have money and time and effort that we can like work together on stuff. But that's also quite a long-term view. And I know many people are not super into thinking of the long term.
Yeah. There's a couple of things in there that are great. I mean, one of them is that I think a lot of people are like, I see they're looking for a genie, not a mentor. They're like, oh, if I could just have lunch with Stephen King, he could take me from where I am to, wherever. I'm like, well, no, you're not going to get that from someone. And Stephen King's just the easy example. But a lot of people are thinking, if I can only connect with so-and-so, the things they could do for me. And that's not really how it works, because that's why you want to find someone who's, close to you on the journey, or only a couple levels higher than you. But the nepotism thing, it's really hard not to sympathize with someone who complains about it until you have been in a situation where someone was given an opportunity that you didn't know, or that someone that you know didn't vouch for, and it goes wrong. So like on film sets, which is where I do most of my work, it's all social networks, almost entirely. It's so socially networked that I'm at the point where if someone asks me for my resume, I assume that they don't know someone who knows me well enough for me to trust them in return, if that makes sense. So that's almost a red flag if you don't know me well, or know someone I know well enough to trust them that we should work together. And it's kind of a problem in a place that wants to be so meritocracy based as America, but everyone wants to work with their friends and people they trust from shared experience. So I have a struggle on that topic internally. And I end up always leaning on, I'm going to go with people I can trust from experience, or because someone told me I can trust them.
Well, and a lot of times it's because they are putting their trust in you by even asking, that you're like, okay, well, like now my trust is on the line. So what am I going to do? Like give it to somebody else? But I mean, I try to do the anthologies, and the anthologies are how I test whether new people are ready for me to trust them. Mm-hmm. But most people, I don't think, have that sort of ability to weed out untrustworthy people. And granted, most of the people, I've been very lucky, because most of the people that I've worked with on the last few anthologies have proven themselves trustworthy. But a lot of them also haven't. They've blown deadlines or missed deadlines, or turned in work that I was not completely in love with, and or like were not good at marketing, or wouldn't talk about the project, and then I'm like, well, who am I going to go to? I know I have now a group of, I don't know, let's say a few hundred creators that I know, like, and trust, and know will deliver work. Or do I try some new human who is not, who's not proven? And yes, they might be great, but, nobody that I know knows them, and they haven't done a whole lot of work, so I don't know if they'll deliver.
Yeah, and there's this classic thing in the actor world where someone says, "Well, if someone could just give me a chance, I'd get on set. I know I could do a great job," and maybe you could, but there's all these steps of getting to know people and earning trust through little things, faithful in something small, then I can trust you in something big. And that's a real thing. And you talked a little while ago about people not looking at long term, but you can't not look at it long term. If you want to have a job in the creative field, in any creative field, you have to know that impressions that you make, one day might prove important 3 years later. And that's just how it is. No one writes one book and lives off that forever. No one, writes one song. Well, that might be a bad example, but very few people make one song and live off it forever. It's the relational part of it is huge. I mean, it's probably more important than your actual talent and craft ability in a lot of places, because there's that classic Venn diagram of easy to work with, easy to work with, reliable, and it's three things. It's like talent, reliability, and whether you like them, I think, are the three. And it's just choose two. And I know tons of people who are less talented than other people, who are easier to work with and reliable, who work all the time because the trouble and the uncertainty is not worth the increase in quality of output.
Absolutely. So when I go and put together a project, like an anthology, or this goes for making even like a list of writers to do scripts for you if you have a TV show, because I've talked to showrunners who say the same thing is, my goal is to have 2 or 3 stories that are done by like the all-star, the people that are like just so good they're gonna drive all the marketing, or their name's so big that like they're gonna drive a bunch of the marketing. And then I want to bring in a few creators that I can test out and see if I can bring them into the stable, because people are retiring or dying or just like
moving
sick or something all the time. So I'm always trying to bring in, let's say 3 to 5 people who are brand new, who I've never seen before and haven't done a lot of work. Now, but the majority of the work is to be done by the journeyman, the person who I've worked with before, who will get the work on time and who I don't have to think about whether I need to use them or that their stuff's going to need to have heavy revisions. I can just send them off, and like their work's always going to come back good, usable. It may not always be perfect. It may not always be revelatory, but like I am not going to have to use a lot of brain power. And if I only get that journeyman levels creations, I'm going to have a book. I'm not going to have to worry. Like if the people who I don't know are screw up, if the stars don't come in and I have to cut those pieces or something, I always know that there will be a project, because there are enough people that I know will deliver to make the thing. And I've talked to a lot of people in a lot of different industries, and that seems to be a pretty standard approach, won't you say?
Yeah, and the secret there too is that reps make you better, and reps that count make you better. So like those journeymen, because they get to do the work over and over and over again, they get better faster than the people who aren't getting hired but have written 1 or 2 great scripts or 1 or 2 great novels. And like you learn so much from being in the room or being in the game, no matter what the game is, that if you're not the most talented but you are reliable and easy to work with, you get better in the actual crucible, as opposed to the thing you've constructed in your mind when you're working in your studio apartment somewhere else. And those people get opportunities.
There's another part of it too, because the people that I've worked with know how I work, and they know what I expect, and they know what I want, and they know like the quality that I require. And so I, again, don't have to train them into what they want to do. So like it frees up. I think people don't appreciate just how much brain power doing this takes, like editing a book or running a show or like doing a convention, whatever it is. Like it just takes, there are so many variables that like go into my head that if somebody can just be like, hey, don't worry about these 4 pages. Don't worry about this episode. Don't worry about this hour of I got it. Then it frees up my brain to think about something else. And there's just, if I had to worry about every creator who was on a book, or every person who was coming onto a live taping or whatever, I would never be able to get all of the things processed. It's only because I have these reliable people that I know I can depend on and will make like usually objectively great stuff. Like that it is usually amazing. But even if it's at the worst case, it's going to be really good. If I can just not have to worry about those and just write it in, then I can deal with the problems that come up, and they are saving me just so much time and energy and effort and heartache.
Yeah, I don't think people understand what you just said enough. I mean, people have said nice things about me a lot of times in my life. Whatever. Probably the greatest compliment I ever received is I was working, I think it was on a commercial. I was working, behind the scenes, and someone had flown in from out of town. They'd asked the person who'd hired me, "Oh, why is he here?" And my friend said, "Oh, he's here because when I tell him to do something, I stop worrying about it." And I was like, "Oh, like that is a specific and very concrete value. Being told what needs to be done, and then that person doesn't have to worry about it." I'm like, that makes a lot of sense as a value that you can strive for.
Yeah, I was talking to my podcast, Podbean, who hosts this podcast, and they were like, "What do you like about us?" And I was like, "You guys are so boring. Like, I love it. I literally never have to think about it. I just have to upload the thing, and then I like it. All of the process behind there is like all going to work. And I will use you forever as long as you can continue that value proposition." And I think a lot of people, especially when they're young, want to be like new and flashy and ritzy. And I'm like, I just want boring. Like, I just want a person who is going to deliver the work that they are assigned in the way that I assign it. Don't go overboard. Like, if you can do something even better in those pages, amazing. But like, all I want is to not have to think about whether you're going to screw it up.
And that's the excitement will come because there will always be problems. Everything else, whatever can be boring, should be boring, reliable, dependable, especially if you're working creatively, because you can make your own excitement. You can say, okay, I'm going to create a soundtrack for this graphic novel, or and like, that's a whole new set of problems and a whole new set of excitement. And if everything else is boring, you have all that energy and all that attention you can turn to something new.
Absolutely. That's why I always try to undercommit to the things that sometimes you can't do it. Like, I just went through an era where like I was overcommitting so hard to everything. But generally, I try to undercommit because then I have the energy to use that excess to get into something that I really want to do, or like some opportunity that comes along that's really amazing.
Yeah. I think most of us, once you've broken in, right? You talked about, hitting those plateaus. Overcommitting is a real danger, because you remember when there was no work and when there's no cool opportunities, and then you want to take them all, and you have, I think, learning to say, no, I won't do that. No, I will do this. That's a real skill to keep you growing. But yeah, the undercommit thing is great. That's one of the Star Trek life lessons. And someone says, how long will it take to repair? And Scotty says, it'll take, 7 hours. Then someone says, how long? And he says, 1.5. And they're like, you always multiply it by 3. And he goes, always.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you then have the space to take on the problem, or when there are problems, you can expand to fill that space. But most importantly, most people stay at the level that they're at because they keep doing the thing that they are doing, because they can't grow, because all of their time and resources are being spent at that level. And the way you do those $500 an hour tasks, or like do the strategic partnerships, are that when you see somebody who's awesome, or you see something that you really want to jump on, you have the ability to do it. And, you talked about my conferences, and like, that's a time that I overcommitted quite a bit, but I also knew that it was for a finite amount of time. And once they were done, I said, I am not organizing any things for the near future, like for the near or long-term future, for an undecided length of time. And what I mean by that is not like I'm never going to do it again, but like, it is going to have to be some frigging amazing opportunity for me to do that, something that's going to jumpstart my career or a different part of my business, or do something for me that I could not do myself. And then, yeah, I will look at my schedule and see if I have time for it. But I don't have time to do like all of the things that I was doing, because now I reached the level that I wanted to reach. Like I did all of this work, did these 3 big conferences, built these mail, and then like I got everything out of it that I wanted, and doing more of those, like, they don't seem to be like I don't know what I would get to the next level by like doing 5 more of the same conferences, unless like we could switch it up and do something really cool with it.
Yeah. Well, and that's also, we mentioned much earlier about failure, taking an opportunity and then saying, oh, this is not helping me the way I wanted it to help me, or this is nothing I want to do it again, is a type of failure in some way. But I mean, I think if we're going to be running our own businesses as creative people, then we should definitely be willing to do that. And even if even if it was too much work or you overcommitted, you can say, I now know that I can do it. I know how to do it better. And I also know why I don't want to do it anymore. And there's value in knowing why you're not going to do it anymore.
Absolutely. And, I mean, I loved doing the virtual conferences, and, I will likely do them again, because I now have like a template that has been like tested in fire multiple times. But it's sort of just like the anthologies. It's a piece of the toolbox that I now have. And like, if I want to do another anthology again, I can do another anthology again. If I want to do another conference again, we can do another conference again. We'll likely, I'm sure that Nick or Neo will listen to this and be like, what the hell, man? Like, what are you saying? You're not going to do anymore? And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, I need some time to like figure out like what the next piece is and what the evolution is, or whether it's going to be just like a stable of my, because I didn't have time for these. It's not things that I didn't make time. I just committed to it. So now I'm like, if I'm going to really do this part of the business, I have to like carve out the time to do it.
Or make it something different. I mean, it could be, Monster Hunter Con, where it's just you and a bunch of Monster Hunter authors that bring in fans, and then that grows all your mailing lists. Now that you know how to do the actual mechanics of it, you can do it for a bunch of different things.
Absolutely. So, unbelievably, we've been talking for almost an hour now. I had a whole list of questions, and we got to a grand total of 0 of them, which is amazing. That's my favorite. Those are my favorite interviews, when I'm like, I prepared and I didn't need any of this stuff.
I'm glad.
But as we work towards wrapping up, I want to talk to you about a project that you have and what you want to talk about, and make sure that the people of the Complete Creative hear about something amazing coming from you now that you've just delivered a ton of value to them.
Cool. Well, I work as an actor primarily in my kind of creative output, but a big project that takes up a lot of my time that I'm really passionate about is called Beta Books, and we are a software platform that essentially helps authors privately share their books before publication and get feedback. And we haven't talked about it much. We talked about it in Phantom a little bit, but one of the things that I think is really important for all artists is to get it out into the public. And so this basically is software that helps people share their books in a private way. You enter the people you've identified off of a newsletter, or you can post a link on your social media. And then it basically creates a safe environment for authors to share their book. They can track who's reading, see how far they've read, collect feedback in a number of different ways, close the book so that people can't read it any longer. That's my 3-minute alarm going off. And that's kind of something that I work on a lot. And it's one of those things that structurally, as you said before, feels kind of boring, because it is a tech solution basically just for distribution and feedback collection. But it gives me a chance to talk to a lot of authors and a lot of readers and conceptualize a lot of the things I like to think about when it comes to creativity. So it's very valuable for me to take that kind of author world stuff, and I get to talk about beta reading and advanced reading and getting feedback and finding book and reader fit, and then take those ideas and say, okay, how can I use these in my film production stuff and my acting stuff? And that's something that I really enjoy.
What have you learned from talking to all of these authors, just about like how they can interact with their readers better or find readers better?
Well, I think the key is that a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, have a real block against asking themselves who will like what they've written, which it's an interesting thing. I've talked to agents, I've talked to marketers, and it's a very common thing where authors have not talked to themselves about their book and said, okay, who will like this book? What is my reader profile? What are the types of people that will like it? And so I've spent a lot of time talking about that. Okay, let's tell me about your book. Like, tell me 5 things about your book. And then we'll find out, okay, well, what kind of people will like this book? And then saying, let's create a book profile and then create some ideal reader kind of characters. And then ask yourself where those people would be. And then start finding those people. And then seeing if after they've read your book, you were right and they like it. And that's kind of the foundation of marketing for a lot of things, which is like, what is this product for? Who is this product for? But because people are so attached to their book as a kind of artistic expression, they don't get to that step unless they have an instinctive knowledge of it or have to do it in person, which I think is also very valuable. And then one of the things that I really enjoy seeing is that once authors kind of figure out who will like their book and bring them in and get them to read it, a lot of times they'll discover that they have the kind of superpowers they didn't know they had, or things that they have written or they do almost without thinking about it, that people say, oh my gosh, your dialogue is so funny. And the author will be thinking to themselves, well, I actually wanted you here to tell me my world building, but thank you. And then over time, you see them go, oh, I have this skill that people really enjoy. I can actually lean into this and decide that this is something that is easy for me. But just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not valuable. I can use this as part of who I am as an author. And I didn't know this was my superpower because I was so worried that I wasn't being descriptive enough in my fight scenes, or I wasn't, establishing enough pathos. And I really enjoy seeing that and hearing that from people.
Awesome. Yeah, that definitely is a reason why betaing books or sending it to people before you put it out in the world is important. Is there anything else that like why is using beta books important for the career of an author?
Well, I will say that I think betaing any way you can do it is important for an author. But we've talked about things that work and that make things boring. And that's basically the goal of beta books. A lot of people will, email PDFs, email Word docs, then have to track who has it over email, then have to track feedback as it comes in and recollate it. And basically what we do is we remove all of that busy work. When we started the software, we're talking to a lot of authors and they were saying, oh, this freed up 2 hours a day that I was using to manage emails and feedback on my manuscript, to track which draft people had, to make changes to the file format because they couldn't open my Word doc. So I had to reformat it as a PDF and send it to them again. So all those kind of little technological headaches, we remove all that so that people basically can get down to having conversations and interaction with the people that are reading. So the software tracks any feedback left or any reply an author makes and makes it searchable, makes it markable. So you can say, oh, I want to keep this feedback. I never want to see this feedback again. And I had this whole conversation and you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, in the old way, you were like, oh, I had that email from Keith who said something about it being funny. And you type the word funny in your email provider and all of a sudden you have 200 responses. Well, with beta books, you can go into your feedback manager, you can type in the word funny and you get back all the replies from Keith that have the word funny in them. You can immediately go, oh, that's the one I needed. And it's basically a bookkeeping tool that we made to basically say, hey, take these 2 hours, 4 hours, 10 hours a week that you were doing this and mark it or write or bake some bread.
Awesome. I love it. All right. So we are out of time, but I want to give you a chance to tell everyone where they can find you online and impart the one piece of advice that you would like people to leave this show with.
Sure. Betabooks.co is the software. That's it. That's basically where I hang out. There's a blog there, and I write about a lot of stuff we talked about there. And I guess one piece of advice would be, I heard a wrestler say this, Colt Cabana, who's an indie wrestler, and he said it, and it really struck with me. It's set manageable goals and then achieve them. Don't set unreasonable goals and disappoint yourself.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for coming today, Paul.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
So that was my interview with Paul Kilpatrick. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go check out Beta Books today. And while you're out there on the web, head to thecompletecreative.com. Check out all of our epic blog posts, free courses, and more, just like our free business course, which is a 10-day course, which you can get for free at thecompletecreative.com/FBC. Finally, if you do like this podcast, please like, rate, and review. as well as subscribing today. That's all for me. I'll see you next time.